a regular currency. Okay, so you probably all heard that. You might have to click up on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is a 2.5 hour presentation. So I hope you're ready. No, it's not. I'm going to try to be done by the top of the next hour. One of my friends says the brain can only absorb what the butt can endure. And most of us have about 45 or 50-minute butts. So I don't want to keep this going all night. But I definitely want to go ahead and talk over a bit about finances, financial literacy, the basics about how money works. Well, here's the Navy EOD joke. If you didn't know, I am from Mississippi, and Elvis Presley in Easy Come Easy Go played a Navy EOD officer. Unfortunately, he just got to play one. I got to be one, and so he had to settle for that other career, right? He didn't get to have the wonderful career that I had. I always joke about that. I loved being Navy EOD. I did do a joint deployment to Iraq in 2008. And obviously, Elvis was the king of rock and roll, right? But I always make that joke, and that is a mural of Elvis Presley in my hometown airport in Jackson, Mississippi. So we're going to talk about Military Money 101. And yes, as a retired EOD tech, I use the marketing line Defusing Financial Danger. I used to diffuse explosive danger. Now I teach people how to diffuse danger in their personal finances. Our model is Five Rings Financial matches that perfectly because we are an education first financial services company. So we might not be a household name you've heard of yet, like TD Ameritrade or Schwab or Merrill Lynch. We're working to change that. But we teach people instead of sell people. We think most people will make good decisions if they're given good information. And unfortunately, our schools very rarely give us any financial education. Those of us, we're all mostly veterans here. We did get that military GMT, but we only got it once a year. It was usually a click through PowerPoint as fast as we could, and it taught us about this much. And here we are now, 30, 40 years later, in some cases, going, I never really learned about how money works. So we're going to talk about some financial principles today, and we're going to talk about how to grow and protect our money. It's the military. We got to have acronyms, right? And when it comes to our pay and our financial benefits, there's a gob of them, right? And after a little while, our monkey mind starts hurting and all we are is confused. But if we take the time to learn about all these programs and these benefits, you can build a really solid financial foundation. You're not going to become wealthy being in the military. That's not the point. But at the same time, all these programs have benefits. And if we understand them, take advantage of them, and leverage them, you can actually come out of the military with a really solid foundation, financial foundation, or with a really bad headache. Hopefully, when we're done, you may not be the completely Zen monkey there, but hopefully, I'll help you out with a little bit of financial information. Most of us have two questions about money that we never are taught about. First, how do I grow my money? And how do I get started saving money? And then, if you already have some money, you have a question about how do I protect that money from market loss? So, we're going to talk about 3 financial principles on how to start and grow your money as effectively as possible. And then we're going to talk about how to grow and protect your money with a specific orientation tonight on the military programs. And again, the alphabet acronym soup, right? SBP, the pros and cons of SBP, TSP, Roth TSP, and BRS. Now, some of us on the Zoom tonight weren't part of BRS. That's a fairly new thing, but it has some pros and cons. What's the best way to save for your kids' college? I don't know about you in the states that you live in. We have folks from all around the country here tonight. It's great. Thank you, folks in Virginia, for joining us this late at night, by the way. But I'm in California. We had some great college education benefits for our daughters. So was a 529 the best way to begin saving for their college? In hindsight, it wasn't. And then SGLI, and then all the alphabet soup that comes with that. VSGLI, TSGLI, VGLI. What are the differences? Why do we have that many versions of that? So let's jump right in. First, I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson. I love history. I was a history major in college, but I'm not going to just crush us tonight with a history class. I'm also not going to crush us with complicated financial terms. Here's the first one, teeter-totter. I hope you weren't expecting some really confusing financial terms tonight. That's about as complicated as it gets. When you have a teeter-totter, you have to have things on both sides to balance it. This is the financial risk and safety teeter-totter. On one side of our teeter-totter is risk. This is things like the stock market, mutual funds, the TSP funds, commodities, gold and silver, Bitcoin and crypto, and even real estate. You might be going, John, real estate's on the risky side? I'm like, yes, it is, because if you owned a property in 2008 and 2009, especially if you got PCS at that time or retired at that time and moved, you realized how risky real estate could be. Many of us saw 40 or 50% of the value of our homes go away in about 12 or 18 months. Now it's come back. So if you were able to hang on, it's been okay. But what if you weren't able to? We like the risk side because there's the opportunity to make a very good return on our investment or our money. The bad thing is on the risk side, it's equal opportunity to lose money. As I mentioned, a teeter-totter has to have something on the other side, and that's the safe side. The safe side is things like CDs, money market, money in bonds, money under the mattress. But I'll tell you, don't put money under the mattress for three reasons. First off, if you sleep on a mattress that has a lot of money in it, you're probably going to spend all your money on chiropractor bills. Secondly, out here in California, we have wildfires, and if your house catches on fire, your mattress is going to burn up with all your money in it. The third thing is we had a couple show up at one of our events. It was actually down there in Texas. And at the end of the event, at this point in the event, they raised their hand and said, you're joking about the mattress, but our grandma back in Italy, we all went to see her, and she had been complaining about her back hurting all the time. So we all pitched in and we bought her a new mattress and we threw hers out. She came home the next day from a quick trip with some of our cousins and just lost her mind. And we're like, why are you so upset? We bought you a mattress. And she explained she had 70,000 euros in the mattress. Well, that's about $100,000, or was in those days. The next day, they were all in every dump and garbage place in town trying to find that mattress. Put your money in the freezer because A, you can make a bad joke by calling it your frozen assets. But also, if your house catches on fire, the things in the freezer won't get burned up. It's actually a great place to leave important paperwork and important things that you don't want to get burned out if your house ever is at risk of catching on fire. Free advice, not really part of the class. The good thing about the safe side is you never lose money. There is a 0% floor unless somebody throws the mattress out. The bad thing is we've had these tiny little rates of return for the past 15 years on that safe side, averaging less than 1%. Why is that important? Here's the history lesson. About 1980, a great bull market started here in the US. And from 1980 to 2000, the market went up and up and up. It hiccuped for like 2 days in 1987, and then it kept going up. And by 2000, we set all-time highs in the market. Everybody got really excited. We probably got a little too aggressive, put a little bit too much money in the stock market, because then you remember what happened, or many of you remember what happened. We had 9/11 and we had the dot-com crash. And in 2001, 2002, most of us saw the first bear market of our lifetimes. We lost up to 45% in certain accounts. But everybody in the investment world said, never happen again, let it ride, it will come back. And they were right. Over the next few years, it came back. And by 2007, we were setting new all-time highs and people were dancing in the street. But think about that for a minute. 7 lost years just to get back to even, and people were dancing in the street. But that's not the end of the story because all of us remember what happened in '08, '09, and 10. We hit new all-time highs early in '08, and by December, a bear market started, and that bear market cost us up to 54%. That was a friend of mine's dad time to retire. He had already hired his replacement. It was a guy a third his age, had trained him. They were already budgeting to pay that young man's salary and not Bob's salary. And Bob was faced with a very bad choice. Find another job and go back to work for 10 more years or lose half of his retirement security and savings and lifestyle. He got a job, he enjoyed it, made some great friends, impacted a lot of young men and women because I know Bob, he's a friend of mine now too. But the bad thing is he lost 10 years with his grandchildren because he lost that money in the market. Well, since then, we stopped saying, is it going to happen again? We started saying, when would it happen again? The market has gone up and up and up. I won't lie. From 2014 until now, the market has been on a tear. We've had a couple down years, but just last week we set new all-time highs. So it's been great for those of us that have been earning and investing in those years. But now we're at that point where we're in the same situation Bob is, and we're thinking about retiring and what would happen if another 01, 02 or 08, 09 happened to us. So a lot of people are scared. A lot of people moved $1 trillion from the risk to the safe side after 2010, where it's been earning that less than 1%. The other people have had the market go up and up and up, watching these all-time highs, but we're fearful that it may drop again. So people say to me, John, you work in finance. It'd be great if you had a magic wand and you could say, I want some of the gain of the risk side, but I need the safety of the 0% floor. And they go, that can't exist. That's too good to be true. I have a confession to make. I've lived in San Diego off and on for almost 40 years. It's embarrassing how little Spanish I speak. I speak even less French. I know 2 words of French, all contraire. There is something right in the middle. It's not too good to be true. It's been available in Europe for almost 40 years. It's been available here in the US for almost 25. It's an indexed account. It gives you the 0% safety of the safe side, and you get market gains when the market goes up. It's the retirement vehicle of the future because you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to talk about indexed accounts a little bit more. I'll make you smarter than 90% of people own indexed accounts when I talk about TSP. And I'll tell you one of the reasons I love doing this so much when I talk about indexed accounts. But I want to talk about those principles now that our history lesson is over. So we're going to talk about 3 key principles. And the great thing about principles, they are true no matter what we use for money, whether it's dollars, whether it's pounds, whether it's euros, whether it's crypto, as long as there's interest rates and taxes, these financial principles apply. They have always applied and they will always apply. That is a principle. So we're going to talk about the time value of money and the power of savings $5 a day. We're going to talk about the power of compound interest. We're going to talk about tax favored strategies. So hang on, here we go. Could you save $5 a day? You're all saying, John, of course we could. We have jobs. We maybe have a Navy or Air Force or Marine Corps pension. We're now working in a second career. Maybe we're still serving active duty and we know we're going to get pay raises. So sure, I can save $5 a day. I go to Starbucks every day and man, it's not even $5 anymore. It should be called $10. Have one less coffee and you'd have your $5 a day. And you're thinking, but what would $5 do? It's only $5. Well, $5 a day is $150 a month. Now let's get in the time machine and go back to when we were 26. We may have a 26-year-old own, but uh, hang on, just got a text from the wife, so take care of that. Okay, $5 a day times 30 days is $150 a month, right? Now that may start getting to be like the cell phone bill, the direct TV, the Wi-Fi, something like that. But you're saying, hey, I want to get started. If you could save $5 a day from the time you're 26 to the time you're 66, that would be 40 years and you've got a decent rate of return at 8%, how much do you think you'd have? Just think about it. Don't pop it in the chat, because you might give away the answer, but you would have $500,000 just from starting with $5 a day. I love teaching this to young people in the military because they're like, I'm getting paid nothing. I'm like, yeah, but if you start now, you can have 40 years of growth. I was sold this plan and not educated on how powerful it was. I hate to admit it, but I would be 5 years away from hitting that 500,000. Now we're doing okay, but that's why I like taking a sales approach and explaining how this works. The concept of time value of money says that if we know the amount of money that we're starting with, or the amount of money we want to have at a time, and we know our rate of return the money will earn, we can figure out how much we need to put to work today or how much we put to work today will be worth in the future. It's just a math problem. Now, you do have to put the money there and have time for it to work because most of us aren't 26 anymore. So if I wanted to have $500,000 more, $5 a day wouldn't work. Or I'd have to risk it and try to make more than 8%. And then I might be at risk of having one of those big drops. But this also shows the power of starting early, talking to those young service members. I just got a young man who is literally in A school, his MOS school, started on one of these programs, and he's contributing to TSP up to the match. So he's off to a great start. Let's talk about compound interest because compound interest is actually the engine behind time value of money. So these first two principles are related. These two guys, they're two of the smartest dudes that have lived in the last 100 years, right? Albert Einstein, I mean, he only invented nuclear power, right? I mean, he thought up things that nobody had thought up in hundreds and thousands of years. But he said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He said it's the most powerful financial force he ever saw. He also said something really important. Those who understand compound interest earn it, and those who don't pay it. And then Warren Buffett, Uncle Warren, the greatest investor of our lifetime. Yes, he's picked some really good stocks. He's also picked some really bad stocks. You don't hear about that as much, but he attributes his success to compound interest, not being some brilliant person. It's really compound interest. So what is compound interest? Well, compound interest is the ability of an asset to generate earnings. This is the textbook definition. And those earnings are generated and then reinvested, and then they begin earning their own returns as well. So now you have your initial investment, your return, and then more returns. They're all earning. Then you add more returns, and that's how it compounds. There is a very complicated formula to figure out compound interest that Albert Einstein might be the only one of us that understands unless you really like calculus. But there's an easy way to figure out compound interest. And I like the easy way. The rule of 72. It says that if you divide the interest rate that you're earning, I took the words off because it's just easy to see the figure. You divide the interest rate into the number 72. That tells you how long it takes your money to double. So remember when I said the safe money side is earning only 1%? Well, one goes into 72 times, right? Not a really hard problem. I don't know about you, but I don't have 72 years for my money to double. So I need to do better than 1%. Remember some savings accounts that only earned 0.5% of interest? That's 144 years. None of us have that kind of time. I'm going to do a little more realistic example because it's going to show us a couple important things about compound interest. I'm going to say that they're three triplets. They have a great aunt that loves them, and she goes, "Girls, I want to help you out for your retirement. I'm going to give you each $5,000. They're all 29 because they're triplets. That's how that works. Sorry, the bad dad jokes aren't going to get any better. But they get $5,000 and they need to invest it and save it until they're 65. Well, the first girl, she goes down to the bank. She goes, I don't really want to think about it. I don't want to go look at investors and brokers and read about all that stuff. I'm just going to go to the bank. That's what mom and dad did. The banker says, "You're giving us your money for that long. We're going to give you 4%. Four goes into 72 18 times. So that means her money's going to double every 18 years. Well, 18 to 29 is 47, and then 65, and her money has doubled to $20,000. Not bad, just sitting in the bank. The second sister, maybe she got invited to an event we host, the ladies host, called Wine, Women, and Wealth, or maybe she came to a Money 101, and she learned that 8% is a reasonable rate of return, especially over that many years. Well, 8 goes into 72 9 times. The first time I heard this, I thought this is the easiest math problem in the world. Same amount of money, same amount of time, double the interest rate, she'll have double this amount of money. Boy, was I wrong. It doubles to 10, to 20. She's caught the first sister, but notice she's only 47. It doubles again by 56 and doubles one more time to $80,000. Is that a small difference or a huge difference? Let's think about it this way. We go into work tomorrow morning and the boss says, "You've been doing a great job. Would you like a $20,000 raise or an $80,000 raise? If you take the $80,000 raise, have your boss give me a call and give me the 60,000, okay? No, you would take the 80,000. The third sister, she goes, "Hey, I'm the risk taker. She was in some crazy MOS like mine, or I think one of y'all said your tech escort, Kim. She was one of those lady, the female part of SF. She's the crazy one." And she says, "I've heard you can get 12% in the market. Yes, I'll be on that roller coaster. I might have that big drop, but what would 12% do?" And we go, "Well, your money is going to double every 6 years." So she catches her sister at 80,000 after four doublings, but she's got two more as well. 160,000 and then 320,000. A few things to give you some tips on compound interest. First, notice I didn't go from 4 to 24 or 40. Going from 4 to 8 made a huge difference. Going to 12 made an even larger difference. Maybe it's time to look at some money that's not doing much more than 1 or 2% and look at that 8%. And that could be why you're here tonight, is to learn about that. The other thing is, again, I didn't go to crazy rates of return. When you hear those people talking about, "Oh, I made 40%, well, one of two things happen. Either they got lightning in a bottle and it's likely not going to be repeatable, or they're part of a scam and they're trying to scam you. Stay away from that. How would you like to see 18%? I can almost guarantee you 18%. Now, the bad thing is when I say the word guarantee, I have to have it in writing. 18 goes into 72 four times, and that means your money's going to double every 4 years. Watch how fast this happens. Caught up with the best earning sister at 53, but there's some more doublings to happen, right? Because we're going out to 65. It is $2.56 million. How many of y'all want some of that right now? Right? Oh, yeah, I would take it all day long. I bet you already have it because it's that right there. And I'll tell you, with interest rates where they're at, 18% is actually kind of good on a credit card. The reason I bring that up is not to be negative, but remember what Albert Einstein said: those who understand compound interest earn it, those that don't pay it. If there's credit card debt going on or other high interest debt, it's best to take care of that before you save and invest. The only time I would say not is if you get a match at work, because that's free money. It's 100% return, but we got to get out of that credit card debt or student loan debt. That is killing our economy. Now we're going to talk about taxes. Talking about taxes is one of my favorite things. Paying taxes is not one of my favorite things. The goal is to put as much money into accounts that are protected from taxes as you can. And if you pay less in taxes or no taxes while it grows, it's going to grow better. That's one way the wealthy stay wealthy. They grow almost all of their money in tax-free or tax-favored accounts. While we were serving in the military, I know it was annoying paying taxes, right? It was annoying to me. I'm getting paid by taxes and I'm paying taxes. But what I didn't realize until about halfway through my Navy career, I was paying the lowest in income tax I ever would. Remember, we got all those pays as allowances, not as pay. And so that's why I'm saying, getting started doing tax favored savings while you're on active duty is a huge benefit. Why? Well, let me show you with a fairly simple example. This is a make-believe account. I don't have anything this good. If I did, you'd probably want to invest more than $1. But for the sake of the illustration, I'm going to create two accounts for two sets of friends. The account works this way. They give me $1. I'm going to double that dollar every year for 20 years. Okay? So the first couple, they only ask me one question. They say, "John, is it going to be growing non-taxable?" Why did they ask me that question? Because they're millionaires, right? So yes, I say, yes, it is. They hand me their dollar and they go, "Thank you very much." So the first year, the dollar doubles to 2, then it doubles to 4, then it doubles to 8. You follow the math there. I'm not going to do it all the way out. At the end of the 20 years, I'm going to need to have an awful lot of money because they're going to have $1,048,000 in that account. And if they come to me to get all that out, I'm going to have it, right? Again, make believe account. Nothing works that well. You might go, "Well, John, I could go down to the casino and put it on red and black." Okay, a lot of fun if that's how you like to spend your recreation time in dollars, but not a good investment strategy. The second couple, I give them the same offer. I say, if you give me $1 today, I'll double it every year for 20 years. Well, they don't take action. They don't hand me the dollar. They leave. And then they remember, oh, yeah, we could try to start that. And they go down to their bank. The bank makes the same offer. But the problem is your bank products, true bank products, in most cases are taxable. So their dollar goes in, but then at the end of every year, they're going to get what's called a 1099 INT and have to pay interest. If they're the average middle income couple in America, they're in roughly a 28% tax bracket. That means on that dollar of interest, they're going to have $1, but they're going to have to pay taxes on it because it's a taxable account, and it's going to tax down from $2 to $1.72. You follow my math? It doubles again because the account works the same way. The 172 becomes 344. It taxes down to 296. 296 doubles to 592 and then taxes down to 509, right? I hope you're impressed I was doing all that doubling and taxing in my head that quick. No, I'm not that good at math. I've memorized that. But think about what's happening there. The first couple already has $8. The taxable account only has 509. I want you to think about it for a second. Don't blurt it out. Don't type it in the chat, but think what you would guess the taxable account has at the end of 20 years. Well, I told you I do easy math, and I just did a little bit of math in my head, and I said, well, 28% from 1,050,000 is about 750,000. I was way off. We do this 30 times, 40 times a month all around the country, both Zoom and in person. And we hear lots of different answers. 750 is actually not that popular. 500,000 is. The most popular is $250,000, right? Which is an $800,000 difference. It's actually too high. At the end of 20 years, they would have $51,353. If you were the closest to that number, congratulations, you get free pie. You know, there's not really a test. I can't send you pie. I'm not Willy Wonka. I don't have Wonka vision to send you pie, but we'll talk about that when we wrap up. But just look at that difference, that just because they paid taxes, everything else about the account was the same. You might be saying, John, that's $1 million difference. I'm like, yes, it is, just because of the way the account was taxed. You might be saying, John, besides being $1 million, wouldn't the millionaire couple have to pay taxes? And the answer is maybe. They may not have to, depending on how they grew that money. But let's say they did. Let's say they were in the 50% tax bracket because they're now millionaires. Well, 50% would still leave them $524,000. And that's a 10 times difference simply because they grew it in a non-taxable account. That is why it's so important to grow as much of our money for as long as we can, if it definitely our lifetimes, if not multi-generationally, in non-taxable accounts. So those were the three principles I talked about. Hopefully you got a nugget or two out of that. You may have already had your aha moment, but we're going to have some more coming up. I want to talk about survivor benefit plan for just a minute, right? Survivor benefit plan is a way to continue your retirement payment if you're the retiree after you pass away. It's a continuation plan for your dependents. You're eligible for it if you medically or regularly retire, and it's not going to apply to anybody in the Zoom because none of us passed away on active duty. But if someone passes away on active duty, their family has the option of taking SBP as part of the benefits. It's part of what the KCOs do. There is a spouse option where you could protect your spouse to get part of your pension, and there are child options to SBP. The benefit of SBP, and one reason you should consider it if you're still serving and haven't already retired, is you automatically qualify when you retire. There's no health questions, there's no age questions. You could be a 60-year-old, very, very senior person, or you could be a 38-year-old that enlisted at 18 and retired at 38. The good thing about that automatic qualification is if you're medically retired, you can still get SBP. You can protect up to 55% of your pension if you get it for your spouse and there's a sliding payment. It used to be all or none. When I retired, SBP was 55% for your spouse for 6.25% of your retirement pay or zero. Now you can pick an amount from zero of your pension to 55%, and the premium payment goes up accordingly, right? You can choose a smaller amount and pay less premium. Just talked about that. There is a dependent option, which is really good in certain cases. Some of my friends started their family very late, so they were retiring from the Navy. One of them actually had a retirement photo at his retirement ceremony holding his infant child. Well, that child would benefit huge from that dependent SBP option. Another beauty of SBP is it is inflation adjusted. So, we get a cost of living adjustment on January 1st. Most years, some years it's been a zero. But if you have SBP, the COLA applies to both the adjusted payment and the adjusted premium. However, it is sometimes more expensive than a private plan, AKA life insurance. My best friend, when he retired, we were able to, for the 6.5% or 6.25% SBP would have cost him, we were able to find him a very significant personal life insurance policy. Unfortunately, he did pass away while that policy was in effect. And so I made a commitment to my friend and I handed his widow a folded American flag and a very large check. It's only payable to spouse or dependents. So say you provide for other family members or you're a caregiver for someone and they are not your dependent, you cannot get SBP coverage for them. Or if you want to leave a legacy to a charity or a foundation, you cannot use SBP for that and you can use life insurance for that. The other thing is, what if 55% of your pension will not provide enough for your family if something should happen to you? You need to look at a personal plan. So, what my recommendation is, if you're getting close to retirement, you're 2 years or less out, research your personalized options well before you retire. You can start your personal plan before you retire. You know it's in place. Then you can either choose to take SBP or you and your spouse can cancel it and you don't get charged for it. So now we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, Thrift Savings Plan, TSP, and the new blended retirement system. TSP, or the Thrift Savings Plan, is a great 401k-like savings plan. So if you're not in the military, you're joining us tonight to learn about the military pay and benefits, just equate TSP with a 401k. If you're military and you have TSP and you're going to get out and go work in the civilian sector, 401ks are pretty much like TSP. Okay, that's the easiest way to explain it without getting into a bunch of legal and tax mumbo jumbo. In TSP, there are now both pre-tax and after-tax options. That's called the Roth TSP. It's named after a senator, Senator Roth, who unfortunately has also passed away. It has very simple investment options. Those of you who are familiar with 401ks maybe are overwhelmed by the investment options. TSP has 5 funds and then it has life cycle blends based on what year you think you're going to retire, where they manage the allocation between those 5 funds. I love that it's that simple. The 401k I've had as a defense contractor was just crazy, too many choices. Where TSP, you've got those 5, they give you enough to diversify without making it confusing. The other thing is TSP is very, very low fee. A lot of people don't realize that their 401k or 403b at their workplace has a 1%, maybe 2%, in really bad cases, a 3% fee. TSP's is like 0.01. I haven't checked lately, but I remember it being extremely low when I had a TSP account. The other beauty is if you opt to invest in TSP, it comes out of your paycheck automatically. You don't have to remember to set it up and send a check every month. It's an automatic plan, which is the best way to build your financial future. So you can't, if you can't tell, I was very glad they gave me the opportunity to join TSP during my career. The blended retirement system came about after I retired. It's the modern retirement system that all people coming into the military now are part of. It's a different retirement system than the traditional 50% after 20 years. There are two huge distinctions. The first is everyone is part of it, whether they enter, today, whether they entered back in January 2018. It does have some legacy features like the previous retirement plan, where you do get a pension payment after you serve 20 years of service. The problem there was in my day, if you didn't serve 20, you got zero. And for a long time, we didn't even have access to TSP. So we had to do it all on our own. What happens now is when you enlist or you get commissioned, after 60 days, the service makes an automatic contribution to a TSP account in your name of 1%. After 2 years, if you're contributing 5% to TSP, you get an additional 4% match. It works much like a traditional 401k in the private sector. This is an optimal solution for those who first off, aren't going to make the military a career, but not all of us know that. I wasn't going to make it a career, and here I am still working around the Navy. I did 22 years. But if you get out before 20 and you don't have a pension, under BRS, you've had that up to 5% match, right? In a very low cost retirement savings vehicle. The other problem though with TSP, like I said, I'm a fan of TSP. I encourage the military guys I work with to put 5% in the Roth TSP because they're paying so low in taxes. The match goes into traditional TSP. So we will have to pay taxes on that someday. But there's problems with it. Just like any retirement account, it goes into what I call IRS jail, which means if you access your own money before you're 59 and a half, you have to pay a 10% penalty. The other thing is all the TSP investment vehicles are subject to market risk, either a market drop in some of the funds or interest rate risk in the fixed investment funds. I could go into way more detail on that. It would keep us here until about midnight for the East Coast folks. We're not going to go there, but just understand TSP has those two large drawbacks, as do almost all 401k like retirement vehicles. Remember 2008, 2009? Well, in 2008, I was in Iraq, and that's the obligatory garden thermometer picture with the thing pegged out. And you notice it's in the shade. And it was already, and it was 120 something degrees minimum. So it heated up during my summertime IA in Iraq. The market was cooling down, and then it fell off a cliff. We remember that 54% drop. Well, how do we protect against that? Well, I want to talk to you more now about indexed accounts. An indexed account exists primarily to protect your money. You can put money into an indexed account all kinds of ways. You can roll a TSP or a 401k over into it. You can roll an IRA into it. Maybe you have a big sum of money that's earning that 1% in the bank. You could put that into an indexed account, or you can feed an indexed account a little bit of money monthly. The first principle is your money goes into a safe money bucket. This is an indexed account. Please do not confuse it with an indexed fund. Your money is not invested in the market. But we do look at the market to credit you gain. The S&P 500 is the most famous market index. It's the 500 largest companies in the US stock market. It's pretty much most the US economy, to be honest. Well, we look at the S&P 500, and that's how we credit gain to your indexed account. You're not invested in the S&P 500. Your money's in a safe money bucket. But we look at the S&P 500, and if it goes up, let's say it goes up 8%. Well, we come over to your safe money bucket and we credit you 8%. Let's say the next year, the market goes down 10%, negative 10. This is the first key principle of an indexed account. When the market goes down, whether it goes down 0.1% or 99.9%, if it goes down 100%, we got real problems. You get a zero. There's a 0% floor, and you will never lose money if your money is in an indexed account. But let's say the next year the market comes raging back and it goes up 12%. Well, just like most rooms that have floors have ceilings, an indexed account has a floor and it also has a ceiling. I call this the not too good to be true line. For this to work for you and for the companies that build indexed accounts, they have to put in this ceiling to protect this account for the long term. Let's say the ceiling was 10%. That means we can come over to your account and in that year give you 10%. You won't get the full 12% the market went up, but you'll get 10%, which is still a nice return. I call, again, this is the not too good to be true line. And for the right part of your money, you give up this small little gain of excess gain in really good performing years, knowing you're still going to get 8, 10, or 12%, depending on where the ceiling is. But what you get to trade that off is you get what we call sleep well at night insurance. I call these swan accounts. I have another colloquial name for them, but this is sleep well at night money. You know you're going to get good return when the market does well, but you know you will never ever lose money again. And this goes on, up and down. And you might be going, John, that's great. You're just picking numbers out of the air. Of course it looks good. What really happened? And I'm glad you asked because I've got a slide for that. Let's say we had $100,000 in a stock market account and you put $100,000 into an indexed account. Well, the first year the market went down. You already know the first rule of an indexed account is when the market goes down, you get a zero. The second year, the market went down again. Your buddy in the market account is going, I'm never going to get to retire. I started saving and investing 2 years ago, and all I've done is lose money, where you've gotten a second zero. Zero is your hero. Well, the market goes up the third year. Well, when the market goes up, the indexed account goes up. That's the second principle of an indexed account. Then year four happens. Unfortunately, the market goes down again. Here's an important third principle of an indexed account. When the market goes up, your gain gets locked in. It's like a ratchet. You turn, 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 and it tightens, and then it click, 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 but it stays tight, and you can start tightening again. The indexed account gets another zero in year four. This is leads me to my second name for these accounts, which is an escalator account. It's moving like an escalator, up and sideways, up and sideways. It never goes down. That is now your new gain and your new floor. Well, year five, the index account looks at the market in 1 year increments. So once you get that gain, it's yours and it's locked in. And then the market comes back, but we have to look at it and go, is that truly a gain? It's still below where it started. Well, then the market takes off and does really, really well. Do you notice the trend here compared to the illustration I did earlier? This is actually the S&P 500 from 2000 to 2007 and an indexed account and its actual returns over that same period. So when the market went up, the index account went up. Well, I want to tell you a quick story. I know I'm running us on time here, but I want to tell you why I think indexed accounts are so important. There was a lady who was a school teacher. She got divorced, her husband left, her kids were teenagers, and they were literally at zero. She got those children through high school. The daughter was really smart. She got selected to a pretty good university and got an academic scholarship in Tennessee. The son didn't really apply himself, so he had to run off to the military to get his college paid for. Then she got serious about saving for retirement, and she saved and saved and saved, and she had enough money. She didn't have a pension. She was going to get Social Security, but that's all she had. And I found out about indexed accounts in 2005, and I let her know about these. And I said, hey, you've done a great job. You have some money, but that's all you have for the rest of your life. She was 70 at the time and was still working, but she knew she couldn't afford to lose money. So she put a good portion of that retirement in indexed accounts. Well, it kept growing. And by 2008, her money was up here. And remember what happened to my friend Bob? And he lost all of his retirement money. In 2008, she did not lose a penny. You may have already guessed. I was the young man that had to run off to the Navy to get my college paid for. And that client is my own mom. So while I was in Iraq in 2008 and we're all thinking the market's about to crash, I couldn't move her money. I couldn't manage it, but I knew it was safe because it was an indexed account. So yes, that's my favorite client. And I saved her retirement with an indexed account because we remember what happened. It dropped 54%. And my mom's money and everyone else who had indexed accounts in those days, their money stayed up there. Since '08, the market has come raging back. We had a little bit of a hiccup in 18. We had a little bit of a hiccup during COVID. During that time, the index account kept going up, going up, going up, went sideways a couple years, and $100,000 in an indexed account in 2000 would now be worth about 441,000. Now, yes, the stock market account has done a little bit better. It hasn't done crazy better. The other thing is, though, we don't know when the market is going to drop out from under us again. Let's hope it doesn't. I don't want it to happen. But if you could take away any risk of ever losing money on at least part of your money, maybe you have an old TSP account from when you were in the military and it's just hanging out there. Now, TSP is not a bad place to leave it from a fees perspective, but maybe it's time to look at moving that TSP as your swan account. And that could be what you're here to learn about tonight. Your recommendation is, in my mind, is to get the maximum match while you're in BRS, start other options that aren't in IRS jail so you have access to money when you need it, and then you roll your TSP into an indexed account IRA once you separate or retire. That way, that account is safe from market risk. Maybe you have a market 401k at that next job, or you start a second TSP account. Let's go back for just a minute about the tax favored strategies. While serving, you are likely paying the lowest tax rate you'll ever pay. So what if there was another vehicle that you could save in that didn't put your money in IRS jail until you're 59 and a half, right? That young sailor I talked to, a friend's son who just finished Marine Corps boot camp, I talked to them about IRS jail until they're 59 and a half and their eyes roll back in their head. They're not meaning to be impolite. They're both very squared away young men. They just don't know I'm 59 and a half, right? And my money's finally out of IRS jail. Let's go back to that couple that had $1 million. They come to me and they say, John, we want all $1 million. We're buying a boat. We're going to sail the Caribbean and we're just going to come off the grid. We need all of our money right now. How much do you think they'd get? And how much do you think Uncle Sam would let them keep? Well, some people say 50-50, like I did in the illustration earlier. Some people say 70-30 because they remember the 28%. My cousin back in Mississippi, when I did this, he said 70-10. He's a great guy, but he's even worse at math than I am. 70-10 doesn't even add up to 100%. Realistically, you might only get 60 cents on the dollar if you saved your money in a traditional IRA or traditional TSP account and you went to retire. But what if we took an indexed account with the up and sideways growth feature and we put a tax-free wrapper around it, which means you can put money in and let it grow and grow and grow tax-free, like the $1 a day, $1 a year doubling. And then you could take the money out tax-free and you had the up and sideways protection of an indexed account. Well, you have to pay tax on the money sometime. So we would say pay tax now. Do you think we're in the lowest or highest tax rate we'll ever see? I'm not going to talk about the election results that are coming out, but we're in some of the lowest tax rates times of our lifetimes, especially those of us that are a little better vintage. The money, though, can come out tax-free at any time for any purpose. So like a 529 plan that grows money for college savings for our kids, but we don't have to use this for college. We can use it for that year while they go find themselves or help them start a business or buy a rental property in that college town and pay rent to ourselves instead of the dorms. You can use that money in a tax-free index account for almost any purpose or for any purpose at almost any time. Your children are likely to get education benefits. You can either roll your GI Bill to them or your state might have education benefits. And you are likely going to pay the lowest taxes while you're on active duty in the military than you ever will the rest of your life. Okay, time to talk about SGLI and VGLI, and then I'm going to wrap us up. So I'm going to go real fast. I apologize. I may go a few minutes over. especially folks on the East Coast, thank you for hanging with me. SGLI is just about the best workplace life insurance plan out there. If you work in the private sector, you know it's limited. You might only get 50,000 or 100,000. In SGLI, E1s, soon as they're in, to admirals and generals that are in their 50s and maybe even 60s, all can have $500,000 of life insurance at the same premium. Highly subsidized by the government, $26 per month. It should be for $500,000 of coverage. $26 a month for $500,000. What I recommend to these young men and women going into the military, I say, take all of it and then just forget about it. Maybe you don't need 500,000 right now, right? You have no dependents, you're living in the barracks, or you're living on the ship. But then you don't have to worry about going to personnel and increasing your SGLI when you get married or you buy a house or whatever. Just it's 26 bucks, right? There's a thing called family SGLI. There's a little bit more of a premium for that, but that allows you to get coverage for any dependent on your page too, right? Our paperwork, for those of you that aren't in the military, I'm cussing at you. That's how we designate who our beneficiaries are. So like your spouse and your children. So family SGLI is also very cheap and covers them if something should happen. Here's one that I did not know about until after I retired. There's what's called TSGLI or traumatic SGLI. And that pays if you get a critical terminal illness or if you have something like a very bad accident or wreck. A friend of mine was hit on his motorcycle while he was a gunnery sergeant in the Marines, and he got about 75% of his SGLI coverage in traumatic SGLI payment. It's meant to bridge you over until you're either medically retired or you retire and you get your VA benefits. It's not something you want to get, right? None of us want to go, yeah, I want my traumatic SGLI payment because something bad's happened to you. His is a crazy story. Sometime I'll tell that when I'm not behind on time. SGLI is available if you're in the reserve or the guard. So that's a great program. There is a little wrinkle that if you don't drill 1 month, you have to send a payment in if by the next month, or they take two payments out of your drill pay. But I think that's a great benefit, right? Just by being in the reserve and the guard, you still have that $26 a month, 500,000. I mentioned that the terminally ill, you can accelerate your benefits. When you separate or retire, you have the option to convert SGLI dollar for dollar to VGLI. The best thing is you have this option automatically. It's not medical qualifying. You don't have to be in great health. Also, it's completely separate from your VA disability claim. Okay, so separate those two. There are two drawbacks to relying on that SGLI to VGLI conversion. Oh, excuse me. Um, the first one is that VGLI becomes very expensive as you get older. So the first few years, the premium is very low. But then there's also a problem with SGLI and VGLI. Other than that small terminally ill accelerated benefit, it doesn't have a modern feature that life insurance has. And I want to talk to you about that for just a few minutes. Here's what I'm talking about VGLI going up. Every 5 years it goes out. So let's look at those windows when most of us retire from the Navy, 35 to 39 and 40 to 44. It's $50 a month for VGLI at $500,000 if you retire before you're 39. Once you turn 40, it goes up to $70 a month and it stays that way until you're 44. Now, for $500,000 of coverage, this is still a very reasonable premium. But you notice it's already gone up $20 that first 5 year increment. Well, then it continues to go up. 45 to 49, it goes up to $95 a month. Still not bad, but then it really starts jumping. 50 to 54, it's 145. 55 to 59, it's $250 a month. At 60 to 64, it becomes $425 a month. That's starting to hurt. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a car payment, right? And, unfortunately, what happens is a lot of veterans that took VGLI look at that 425, they pay it for a few months, then it starts hurting and they cancel it. And then what happens? Well, we're much more likely to die at 64 than 44. But now we don't have that coverage. It gets even worse, guys and gals. At 65 to 69, it becomes 690. And these are the current premium payments from the VA website. They actually went down a couple years ago, but they're still really high because look what happens at 70 to 74. Over $1,000 a month for $500,000 coverage. Then once you turn 80, it becomes $2,200 a month, over $25,000 a year. So over 5 years, you're going to pay $125,000. And then if you die, your family's going to get 500. And you'll have been paying this premium for all those years. So maybe not the best option. The other, and again, most people cancel it when that bill gets that high. Then they don't get any benefit from it. There's another problem with VGLI and SGLI, actually, and the old style of life insurance. We're going through life, we want our family's income to be above our expenses. Sometimes it's this much above, sometimes it's this much above, right? But then something happens. And I'm not talking about the dog getting sick and you have a vet bill, or one of the kids going to the dentist, or you need new tires on the truck. Those are all expensive things. The really expensive thing is a major medical event. The big three: heart attack, stroke, or cancer. And I bet if I went around, all of us could think of someone that that's happened to in 2025, right? And we're just now in November. When those things happen, our finances take a big hit because our income goes down because we're no longer able to work if we're the one that got sick, and maybe a family member can't work as much because they're taking care of us. At the same time, our expenses go way up, right? You might be thinking, well, John, don't people have medical insurance? It's required now, and we have it if we're military. Yes, you're right. But what does medical insurance not pay? Health insurance not pay? Well, it doesn't pay the copays and deductibles if you have those. It doesn't make the mortgage payment. It doesn't make the car payment. It doesn't pay the other insurances like car insurance, property insurance. It doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't pay the utilities. It doesn't even pay Wi-Fi and Netflix. And what else are we supposed to do while we're recovering? But that right there creates unimaginable debt. 60% of bankruptcies in our country are caused by medical emergencies, not because people aren't good with money. Two-thirds of business failures, a major medical event is a contributing factor. What if you had access to a big pile of money and you could turn that on and keep that income line above the expense line? Then you don't have financial stress on top of medical illnesses and stress, and you can focus on getting better. This is what's called living benefits life insurance. It's the modern style of life insurance. Full living benefits are a game changer. How do they work? Well, I'm going to use the same $500,000 reserve that SGLI and VGLI have. Let's say you have a critical illness or a critical injury, like the really bad motorcycle wreck my friend had, or you have a stroke, or you have a heart attack. Those are all critical illnesses or critical injuries. If that happens to you, you could accelerate 75 up to 75% of that $500,000 reserve, which would be $375,000, and it would come directly to you. You could spend it as you needed to. You could buy a mobility van. You could modify the house. You could take 6 months off for work or longer to focus on getting well instead of rushing back to work and having a second heart attack. Or then if you have a terminal illness, you can accelerate up to 90%, and that would be up to $450,000. Years ago, we had a young lady who was one of our clients. She was 29 years old. Her husband and the father of her two daughters was out of the picture. Her mom had died of breast cancer when she was a teenager. Her dad had died in a car accident about 5 years before this. Well, she also had breast cancer. She tried everything she could to beat it. She and her doctor worked and worked and worked at it. And he just said, I'm really sorry. I've done all I can do. You are terminal. You have about 6 months to live. She said, Doc, but there's this experimental treatment. I heard about it on 60 Minutes while I was putting the girls to bed. After they went to bed, it might work for me. He said, oh, yes, that would work, potentially work for your kind of cancer. But you said, You said it's an experimental treatment. Unfortunately, your health insurance doesn't pay for experimental treatments. Through her tears, she called her agent, and he said, "You have terminal illness living benefits." She accelerated some of her term life insurance, paid for the experimental treatment herself, and a few years ago, she walked one of those girls down the aisle. To me, that's life insurance, right? The old stuff is death insurance. It would have paid after she died, and who would have raised those two young ladies? The third way it pays is if you have a chronic injury or illness. This is a lot like long-term care. It's not long-term care insurance, it's life insurance, but it pays if you can't do two of the six functions of daily living. Those are things that we take for granted as functioning adults, right? Bathing, toileting, transferring, dressing ourselves, being able to take care of ourselves, and being able having our mental facilities. If you can't do two of those things, you need chronic care, right? That would pay 2% per month for up to 50 months. So, I don't know if you've checked into it, but out here in California, good quality long-term care and chronic care, whether you have it in your home, if you have it in your home, it's about $6,000 or $8,000 a month. If you go into a facility, it's anywhere from 10,000 if it's regular care. If it's Alzheimer and dementia care, it could be as much as $20,000 a month, right? And this would pay for Alzheimer or dementia. So instead of dipping into our savings and dipping into our retirement account and dipping into our home equity, and then I die, well, Jeannie's going to want to dig me up and kill me again because now she's living this much above the poverty line because all she has is Social Security. Because it's happening to more and more ladies that they're spending their money either on family members or their spouse or partner, and then they run out of assets and live their last few years in poverty. We're trying to change that. We are a living benefits cause company that we want everybody to get living benefits. We say if you're breathing, you should look into living benefits, right? If you have a TSP or a retirement account, indexed account might be for you, but everybody should look at living benefits. I think VGLI and SGLI are great options, but they don't have living benefits. Why not have both if you can? Living benefits comes to you tax free. You don't have to pay taxes on it. That's the beauty of how the tax code works. I'll talk about it in just a second, and use it for whatever you want, and you never have to pay it back. If we grow money inside of a life insurance plan, that's how we build the tax-free indexed account. We use that same tax-free feature. Usually, if you look at a living benefits plan, comparing it to VGLI, it will save you $1,000 or more in most cases over 20 years. And it's a really simple process. If you have VGLI, don't get rid of it yet. But you might want to check with the person that invited you tonight to say, hey, John talked about that living benefit thing. Show me how that works and show me if you can give me better coverage for less money. I did that with a Marine when he retired. He actually built the spreadsheet. I didn't build it. He shows it to me and I say, hey, Nick, that's great. So it looks like you can save money or get more benefits. He said, no, no, John, not or, and. I'm like, oh, you're right. He proved it himself that you get more with a living benefits personal plan than you get for VGLI, and likely you'll save money over the 20 years or so. What appeals to you? What did you think of? Who did you think of that maybe this could also help? I really appreciate those of you that have been on this hanging out with me a little bit after, the hour. But let me just wrap up real quick. Indexed account, if you have a lump sum or you have that TSP hanging out there, tax-free index account, maybe save for a child or a grandchild, use education benefits, but then also grow money for them or for yourself. And then living benefits. Like I said, we should all have living benefits. Thank you very much for your time. Get back with the person that invited you. Tell them I say that they owe you free pie, and also get your questions answered. I know I talk fast. I talk 500 words a minute, gusting up to 1,000. The time and date for the next Money 101 there is wrong. But thank y'all for your time today and for joining us. I'm going to turn the recording off.